right, guys, welcome back to Of Stone and Clay. This is episode 137. We are here with Zach Collier. Does anybody call you Collier Daddy?
I mean, if I start a podcast, you
Okay.
better believe us.
that'd be a good name. Collier Daddy.
Collier Daddy.
Yeah, because you're a daddy.
I am.
Yeah.
Yeah, father of 4.
Nice, dude. Well, thanks so much for coming on. Zach is a lot of different things. He's a musician. You're in a band. You're a keyboardist. You're an editor, a publisher, a writer. What for you is like when you hear those things? What for you is like that's my thing?
That's me. I think a creator.
Mhm.
Yeah, creator is probably. I know that's like a general like YouTube creator or whatever. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just a firm believer in diametric forces in the world. Like you can either be a destroyer or a creator.
Right.
And I try to put as much energy as possible in my life towards creating things that are good instead of tearing things down.
Yeah. What do you feel like for you gives you the most joy creating? Whether is it writing? Is it composing music? Is it editing? Do you have one that's like?
Yeah. I would say anything that has to do with storytelling.
Mhm.
So probably I prefer writing to editing,
Yeah.
but also it's interesting because I really enjoy getting things out the door to people.
Mhm.
It's weird that I've got an opinion on this, but everybody's always like, if a tree falls in the woods, it doesn't make a sound, whatever.
Yeah.
Nobody's around to hear it, doesn't make a sound. And I don't think it does.
Okay.
I've spent a lot of time.
What about the animals around?
With the animals?
Yeah.
Well, someone's around to hear it, right?
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, if it's just a tree falling and literally nobody else is around, like the sound that it generates, right, is only sound when interpreted by ears.
Right.
Otherwise, it's just air moving.
Sure.
And anything media related has to be people focused because people, like, that's where the magic happens. Is all art is communication. It's just communication on a really deep level.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's part of why I love this podcast so much, is just because you get to the heart of what makes people human, and you focus a lot on the individual, and other people feel that when they watch it. It feels like getting to know you or getting to know the guests, and really having a universal experience. And I think that that's really powerful.
Yeah,
it feels like the camera's just a window to a really great conversation.
Right. Yeah. Thanks, man. For you, remind us what you're kind of currently doing right now that you're most focused on. You're doing a lot of things.
Yeah.
But yeah, what's sort of your current job description?
So I'm the president of Deseret Noise Company. So I'll say that again. I'm the president of Deseret Noise Company. Deseret Noise Co. is a full-service production team. And so everything from publishing to video to audio, like that's what we do. So, whether that's doing things for hire or creating wholly owned works. So like Provo Music Magazine is one of the things that I do. We created a music magazine that's hyper local to our city. But we did that as a way to funnel money to the creatives in the scene and give them a way to have employment or to get the word out there for their art. So a lot of the things that we create that are wholly owned by us, we are mission based, and so we do work for other people to fund those initiatives.
Okay, gotcha. What got you into writing? What did you study in school?
Yeah, so I'm actually a music major, 6-year music major, killed it.
Good, right on time.
But yeah, what got me into writing, though, I was writing long before I got into music. My dad read The Hobbit to me when I was in first grade. And I mean, it took like 3 years, but every night we'd read The Hobbit, and it captivated me and really like deeply affected me in a way that nothing has since. I mean, other things have come close, but that was really my first exposure to a fully realized vision that really affected me emotionally.
Yeah.
And I've had this feeling several times where like I really connect with a great album, or like I went and saw Avengers Endgame opening night in Los Angeles, and after the movie, I just went out to my car and cried. But I didn't cry because of like the movie. I
Mhm.
mean, the movie was very good, and I really appreciated how everything came full circle. But watching the credits and seeing just how many people were
Oh,
involved,
cool. Yeah.
there are hundreds and hundreds of people were involved. Plus that was the culmination of like 20 years of work,
Yeah, yeah.
and and culmination of everything that Stan Lee did before that, and
Mhm.
died before he got to see it.
Yeah, yeah.
So anyway, I was like really aware of the history of Marvel. I'm a huge Marvel fan, but I just remember crying in the car, wishing I could be a part of a team like that.
Yeah, yeah.
That really affected the world,
Right, right.
Um,
I don't think I've ever wept during credits.
yeah.
Yeah.
Luckily, I made it out of the theater. So
Sure, sure. You're like, I'll wait till I get to my car. Yeah, yeah. That's cool, man. Yeah, so did you sort of become a prolific reader at a young age?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Part of
What
why I have glasses was
right,
one
right.
of those kids with the flashlight under the
Okay,
covers and
nice.
reading in the dark,
So um is it all over the place, or has it mostly been in sort of that sci-fi fantasy world or
Yeah, so sci-fi fantasy was kind of like the jumping off point, and then I had a really strong classics phase, where I read everything from, you know, uh, oh man, The Great Gatsby, all the way to One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest to Fahrenheit 451, whatever. I just
yeah.
like felt like anything that was people deemed culturally significant. I was like, I should
Yeah.
probably have a pulse on that,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
know
yeah.
what it is.
Right.
So I went through that phase, and lately it's been a lot more history and philosophy.
Mm,
I really enjoy understanding why things are the way that they are,
yeah.
especially with people.
Yeah. What's your favorite like historical period?
Oh, favorite historical period. Um, I really, I like the Middle Ages, but not for like the knights, like that sort
Mhm.
of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
I've got this pet theory that we are living in a post-apocalyptic society.
Okay.
Okay, because like the bubonic plague is closer to us than the bubonic plague was to the time of Christ.
Okay. Yeah,
Right? It's only
fair
like
enough.
700 years ago, right?
Okay.
I mean, talking about Avengers, like half of the world got snapped 700 years ago.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so anyway, I just I find that period really fascinating about what we lost,
Right.
because it wasn't just like two people in a room, one of us is a goner, right? Like
Yeah.
we're in the room, we could have survived, and then somebody outside could have. So
Yeah.
what industry did that decimate? Did we lose all the historians? Did we lose all the
Yeah.
doctors? That sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so I really discovering the implications of what a global, like a truly catastrophic global pandemic is or was, and then how that fear has like imprinted itself on us,
Mhm.
is really, really interesting. I think we're still feeling the effects of that, even
Yeah.
though we're not aware of that.
Yeah, that's really cool. I remember during the pandemic, I started reading stuff about the Spanish flu
Mhm.
and sort of what the world was doing during that time period, and it was really interesting to see sort of the correlations there.
Yeah.
Um, what is now that you have 4 kids,
Mhm.
right? What are their ages?
So my oldest is 8, so it's 8, 6, almost 3. I'll be 3 in a couple weeks, and then 7 months.
Okay, so what have you done to sort of have you started like inculcating the need to read and like understand stories and understand the beauty of art and what at such a young age, how do you sort of do that as a parent?
Yeah, so I think consistency is really important. I'm not the world's most perfect parent by any means, but one thing that's been really important to us has always been to read together at night.
Mhm.
And really, what that does is one, it's a good cue for bedtime once they know that.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just story times. Like you got to get your pajamas on to read
Right,
stories, right?
right.
But that gives everybody a chance to look forward to an evening together, just doing an activity and settling down. But like reading, I'm actually working with a lady, one of my friends. Her name is Sarah, but she's building out a course that helps people to learn how to read to their kids,
Mm,
but not like learn to read, but learn how to have a healthy environment for reading and have that family moment.
yeah, yeah.
Just because of the opportunities that it presents. Like if you've got really good children's literature, for example, there are some books that will have like 3 words per page, and it's not like circle, square, or whatever.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it combines with the illustrations to like instill a sense of wonder.
Mhm.
And so when you're doing that with your kids, you can ask what Sarah calls W questions, right? You can say like, I wonder why that mouse is wearing a hat.
Yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah.
what's going to happen if they go downstairs?
Right.
And that gives kids an opportunity to like imagine things and express themselves, and there's no wrong answers.
Yeah.
So it's a safe space for them to be able to talk. And then sometimes you don't get through the book, you're just laughing too much because kids are really funny. So that that experience with my dad growing up of just spending quality time with him, like forever, I'll remember that. I know that he was in my room every night, like instilling a sense of wonder and trust.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Dude, it's funny. I remember my mom's told me that she was worried about me because I just hated reading growing up. And like my older sister loved reading, my parents were big readers, and my mom was just like worried about me cuz all I cared about was sports, you know? And so I would occasionally read like a basketball book from the school library that was like mostly pictures, you know?
Yeah.
And then I got weirdly into I got obsessed with the Guinness Book of World Records.
Yeah.
And so I started reading that cover to cover and became obsessed with facts. And I think that got me eventually, because I was a history major, so that got me more interested in just the world and history. And then I remember I was on vacation in California with my family. I was like 16 and we're just like chilling on the beach. And I was reading some like 50-page biography of Michael Jordan or something. And my dad's like, why don't you read a grown-up book? And he's just kind of razzing me. And I was like, well, they just look so boring or whatever. And he like throws me like some like John Grisham novel. Right. And he's like, just read the first 2 chapters. And if you don't like it, it's not interesting, I'll leave you alone. And I was like, whatever. So I started reading it and like loved it and read it, in the next 2 days or whatever. And that kind of started my journey towards just loving books and being interested in fiction and not being obsessed with, I'm only going to read things about the hobbies I love,
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's really important to at some point teach your kids the beauty of reading and the importance of art. Have you, with your older daughter, have you started reading like, any classics or more complicated books?
We've tried at this point, like, I try to make sure that it's stuff that she is interested in, right?
Yeah,
So we've been through like Junie B. Jones, and
Okay, yeah.
we're getting into those like early reader books, but yeah, I try not to force too many things on them because I want to support what it is that they're really passionate about. So if they like, she's a huge into dancing. She's a great dancer, and so I want to take her to go see like the Cougarettes and like the local dance troupe, whatever, and be there for her. But I think there is a place for important texts. Whether that be religious text or philosophical text. Like, I think part of the reason why like hardcover books exist, or like, why there's been a resurgence in vinyl, is because people want permanent records that they can hand down and say, this was important to me.
Right.
And so, there are things that we do, like reading scripture together at night, or, I come from a very specific religious minority in America, and so we talk about our own history and kind of point to historical things that have happened, so that you can point to people and be like, oh, they did it this way.
Yeah.
How did they solve this problem? They ran into this issue. So it's important to have that framework of like how people before you, how your forebears and people who are more directly related to you solved problems is really good. Instead of just dealing with Iron Man or or the Wizard of Oz, those sorts of things.
I like that. What are like maybe 2 of your all-time favorite books?
Oh, 2 of my all-time favorite books. Wow.
Let's go 1 fiction, 1 nonfiction.
Oh, 1 fiction, 1 nonfiction. Nonfiction pretty much might as well be fiction because it's so crazy, is the autobiography of Parley P. Pratt.
Okay.
Wild. If you want to have a guy who gets chased by dogs or stranded on an island in the middle of the Mississippi, it's like a real life Tom Sawyer kind of adventure. Crazy. I loved it so much. I named my son after him. So that was really influential for me personally. But in terms of fiction, there's a lot that I can point to. but I really, um, this is kind of a cliche answer, because everybody loves The Lord of the Rings, but especially because it was so formative to me
Mhm.
in my childhood, uh, it just really sticks out as like not just a pinnacle of fantasy, but just of literature in general.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and I love it because of like why Tolkien did it.
Mhm.
He didn't do it because he just wanted to like make $1 million or because he wanted
Yeah.
to, it was really an exercise in language.
Yeah.
He just loved making up languages. Like everybody with modern fantasy, because he started like 100-year fantasy trend where everything has to have elves and trolls and dwarves and
Yeah.
whatever. Um, but so everybody will have their own story and then they'll make a language because that's what Tolkien did, and he
Right.
wanted a fully fleshed out world. But he wrote the languages first,
Yeah.
and then he just needed a reason to use them, right?
Right.
Which I like, what a nerd, and
Yeah, yeah.
that's so that's where I think the passion comes through, is that he was really passionate about people
Mhm.
and passionate about the things that he'd seen with World War I and World War II, the things that he'd seen in the world and personally experienced. And um, Lord of the Rings is not a Dark Lord versus the hero versus the
Mhm.
chosen one sort of story. If it was just Gandalf versus Sauron, I think it would be a really boring book,
Yeah, yeah.
right? But the intrigue there, I think, is the way, especially if you look at like, you've got the spectrum, you've got like Gandalf on the good side and Sauron on the bad side, and then moving inwards, you've got like probably Sam, and then you've got Frodo, or you've got Gollum, and then you've got Frodo right in the middle,
Mhm.
right? And Frodo is not a perfect chosen one. In fact, he's not a chosen one. He's
Right.
just some guy,
Yeah, yeah.
and some guy who was chosen, but he stumbled into it. But he ultimately makes the wrong decision and has to get his finger bitten off in order to like,
Right, right.
and weirdly Gollum is the one who saves the day, right? So it's a perfect example of how things get really messy,
Mhm.
even when you're striving for ideals.
Yeah, yeah.
Because Frodo wanted to do the right thing, but he was weak. But he had a really good best friend,
Yeah.
a best friend that likely wouldn't have been strong enough to do it, but was a great, like, there's value in somebody waiting in the wings to help.
Yeah.
And then you've got somebody else who's trying to change, ultimately fails, but there's
Right.
still, like, Gollum trying to change and failing still had a positive impact on the
Yeah,
world.
yeah, it's
So
really redemptive.
yeah, it's really redemptive, and goes to show that you can make good things out of bad things,
Right.
and real life is messy.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. Are you a rereader? Do you like have your favorites and you'll read them once every few years? Or?
I'm more of a rewatcher,
Okay, yeah, yeah.
unless I'm like reading it with somebody.
Okay, yeah.
There's the communal aspect. I tend to have a pretty good memory when it comes to plot, and so I'm not a huge rereader, but I also
Mhm.
rewatch for the same reasons, where I'll have a favorite movie and then invite somebody over to
Yeah,
see
yeah,
it.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
you can get that done in 3 hours max,
Right, right, right.
But
There's something special about like sharing your favorite stuff with the people you love.
Mhm.
It's so fun. Like whether it's a favorite movie or favorite book, like just to sort of recapture that magic with somebody is awesome.
It's also disappointing when it doesn't land.
Yeah, yeah.
You're like,
Yeah,
oh.
that's why I do it cautiously.
Mhm.
Like I'll give a lot of caveats, a lot of like this is why I love it, but it doesn't mean you're going to love it. And then if they go on board, I'm like, all right, let's do this.
Yeah.
Um, Tell me about your wife, how you met your wife. Tell me
Yeah.
about that journey.
So my wife and I actually met on Tinder in
Oh,
the
let's
early days of
go.
Tinder, back when
Great.
it was free.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I don't. Everybody meets on the apps these days, and
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not sure if that's good for society as a whole. But yeah, in the Wild West, we met each other, and now I feel like things have switched so much in society that if you meet somebody in real life first without talking to them online,
Yeah,
it's creepy. But back in the day, it was like stranger danger. Don't meet somebody from the internet, right?
yeah. Yeah,
And so it took us about 6 months before we actually met. But when I met her, it was like love at first
yeah.
sight, and we were together every day until we got married, and
Wow,
been
yeah.
together since. So
Had you dated a lot before you met her?
I had.
Yeah.
I was, dude, I thought something was wrong with me.
Really?
Yeah, I thought I had commitment issues.
Mm.
I apologize if any of my exes see this, but every time I'd get into a relationship, I would wake up the next day, I'd ask a girl to be my girlfriend, and I'd wake up the next day and my head would pop off the pillow and I'd go, oh no, I'm stuck. What have I
Yeah,
done?
yeah.
And it was such a common, and I'd stick it out or whatever, but like I would immediately feel trapped.
Yeah.
And it was such a like meme in my family that after I asked my wife to marry me, the next day, my mom called me first thing in the morning. Like I woke up from a call, from my mom, and she was like, "All right, any buyer's remorse?" And I
Yeah, yeah,
thought really hard for a second, and I was like, you know what? No,
yeah,
this is the best day of my life.
right.
So that was a very good sign.
Yeah. So in hindsight, do you feel like it actually was commitment issues or just that you hadn't deeply connected with any of these exes?
I think I hadn't deeply committed or deeply connected to
Yeah.
any of them. I don't think it was commitment issues. Um, I I'm not going to share that story. I was going to share something else, but about my relationship immediately before that. But
Yeah.
I'll spare them details. But no, I think I was only ready to meet my wife because I had learned an important lesson before, like immediately before that. And uh, it sounds so stupid, but the most important thing about a significant other is that they like you,
Right.
not that you like them.
Hmm.
Right. I mean, it's also important that you like them. You need
Right.
both of those things.
Yeah.
But so often we'll see somebody and we'll like pine after them. And so you lead with, I like them.
Yeah.
Right. But like, if they don't like you back immediately, like one of the tropes in Hollywood is that you just win them over. You're persistent.
Right.
If only they saw the real you.
Yeah.
And that's so much work.
Right.
Like and it may never happen. And also I think you're leading with the trying to win somebody like an object.
Yeah.
And actually there was a relationship that didn't pan out. Like prior to my wife, we never dated, but we went on several dates. And it was this girl named Julie that really stuck out to me because she was so kind to me.
Hmm.
And even though I didn't feel the same way, she really got me to like perk up and go, oh, who treats me like she does?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'd never been shown such kindness and such interest. She was like,
Mhm.
oh, you're playing a show this Friday? I want to come.
Right.
She's just a really good friend
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
just a really good person.
Yeah.
And that got me to like open up my eyes to all of the wonderful people around me instead of having tunnel vision. Like
Mhm.
so often people will have a type, or
Yeah.
they'll get stuck dating the same people
Mhm.
because I think it's because you're so focused on those people. And so that got me to like reevaluate how I engaged with other people. Sometimes I would plan my whole weekend around like, dating culture, right?
Mhm.
So I'd have a movie I'd really want to see, and then I'd ask somebody out, and they're like, "Oh, I'm busy that week," so I would not go see the movie
Mhm.
unless they were, they were going to come with. So I'd
Yeah.
delay my own plans for somebody else to
Mhm.
get them to like me, or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I remember there was another girl we didn't end up dating or whatever, but I had asked her out to go see, one of the new Marvel movies or whatever. And she's like, oh, actually, I'm busy. And she'd been busy like 3 times before.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, no worries. And then I just went and saw the movie by myself.
All right.
And it was awesome. And I had a great time.
Yeah.
And then the next week, she's like, oh, I'm free this weekend. Do you want to go see the movie? And I was
Mhm.
like, actually, I already saw it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she was like, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of offended. But I was like, but I'd love to go see another movie
Yeah. It
with
turns
you
out
this
there's a
weekend.
bunch of movies.
There's so many movies, endless movies, right? But that really, like I knew my wife was the one for me because one, she was super kind,
Mhm.
and clearly very interested in me.
Yeah.
And it was mutual. So we immediately connected and it was very obvious, but also we just wanted to be around each other.
Right.
Like one of our first dates, I was like, I mean, I don't even consider it a date. It's just
Yeah.
an awful date, but I needed to get a haircut.
Mhm.
And so I just asked her to come with me.
Yeah. Yeah. Just because
Right.
you just wanted to be around her.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that, it's so important because even now, especially with all the hard times that have come in the 10 years since getting married, that at its core, wanting to be with each other
Mhm.
has been what has kept us together
Yeah.
through everything that we've been through. We just, at the end of the day, we don't want anybody else. We want to be with each other.
Right.
And that's, I don't know. That's been the cornerstone and the foundation of our relationship is
Yeah.
that we both like each other.
Yeah, that's awesome. I always say I'm obsessed with in courtship, the thing I care about the absolute most is personality.
Mhm.
Like I need to be obsessed with your personality. That's what I'm chasing. That's what I'm hunting. There's a lot of other things I want and that I think I need. And I have these sort of pillars of dating that I think are sort of required. But if I don't like you a lot, if I don't just love being around you and want you to like come to my haircut, then we're probably not a good match. Tell me why And do you truly believe it was love at first sight, or does it just feel like that after the fact?
Oh, I definitely feel like it was love at first sight, or at least some sort of really strong connection, because
Mhm.
from the jump, she was really, really fascinating to me.
Mhm.
Because it wasn't just like, oh man, she's really beautiful,
Yeah.
although she was, right? Um, the first thing she said to me was, "This isn't a rash, I swear."
It's a great opening line.
And I was like, "What are you talking about?" Because we met at like a summer party, and it was the sun had gone down. I
Yeah.
hadn't, but she had fallen asleep by the pool
Uh,
with like a towel over one leg and like a book over the other leg, and gotten a terrible sunburn.
okay.
And it was just this splotchy. Some of the, like, she had tan lines or sunburn lines, but in a really splotchy pattern, right? But I couldn't see it because it was dark, and I just thought that was the funniest thing. I was like, this
Yeah.
girl is awkward, but in the most endearing way,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And it just, the hits kept coming. I had a turn on our first date, when well, I guess it was after the haircut, so our second date. But I took her country swing dancing. Why? I don't know. Neither of us like country music.
Okay.
Neither of us like swing dancing, but it was a thing to do. But we're dancing, and there was like a lull in the conversation. I was feeling a little nervous and a little awkward, so I was like, maybe I'll wow her with my sense of humor, right? So I was like, hey, why aren't orphans good at baseball?
Great question.
And she said, why? And I said, because they don't know where home is.
Yeah.
And she looked at me and just said, you know, I was raised in foster care, and I'm great at baseball. And I died inside.
Yeah.
And now we have 4 kids.
Right.
But no, that, she laughed, but then immediately cut me down with like, dude, like, know your audience.
Right.
But then I learned something really important about her.
Mhm.
And I mean, she has such a painful past, but is such a remarkable human being. And so, like, even though I guess on paper she and I don't really have anything in common in
Mhm.
terms of like, she hates sci-fi and fantasy,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
She's not a musician.
Mhm.
She's a dancer, but she doesn't play any instruments. She doesn't like to sing, like all the things on paper that I thought were really important.
Yeah.
We just don't link up on those superficial things. But how she treats people and our overall trajectory in life, like, I mean, I was talking about like destroyers versus creators. Like, her
Mhm.
whole life has, because people go through trauma and sometimes they repeat cycles.
Mhm.
It's really easy to do. I don't fault anybody for doing that. But her whole life has been centered around breaking cycles of abuse in her family.
Mhm.
And she dedicated her whole college experience to being a good student and learning how to undo the damage that was done.
Yeah.
I mean, she was a straight A student, full ride scholarship kind of person.
Mhm.
I did not go through even 1/100th of what she went through.
Yeah.
And I got B's, man.
Right.
I was lucky to get into college. I fell asleep with the ACT, uh, you know, she really is laser focused on creating a good future.
Mhm.
And that is somebody, I'm the weaker part of the relationship, to be honest. And that is somebody that I will forever be chasing, because that's, even though she's younger than me,
Mhm.
I want to be like her when I grow up,
Yeah.
if that ever happens,
Yeah. That's great. What you said, these last 10 years have been really hard and tumultuous in a lot of ways. All the things you guys have gone through, and you told me before we started that her last pregnancy was really heinous, and she had an aneurysm. All these things you guys have been through, and I'm sure a lot of it I don't even know. How has it helped you see her in an even different light? Because obviously you first meet her, you kind of fall in love quickly just because she's great and she's kind and she's fun and she likes you and all these things. But after seeing her kind of go through some hell, and maybe you've gone through some hell and you've been there for each other, how has that sort of fortified and even elevated your guys' love?
Yeah. So the things that we've been through have been so extreme. And I guess to anybody who's watching, or listening, if you have gone through any sort of adverse childhood experience, and you're experiencing medical problems later on in life, especially if anything that happened to you was severe, that's normal. It
Mhm.
sucks, but it's normal.
Yeah.
Stress really does take a toll on the body, and it's unfortunate. It's not fair.
Yeah.
But it's normal and you're not alone. Sometimes when you're going through things that medical problems that may be, like for example, my wife had a hole in her heart and she had to have heart surgery a few years ago, right? Most people don't make it into adulthood with a hole in their heart because that's detected on like early childhood scans.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. But she was in foster care. So she never got the scan. Right.
Yeah.
And so she had problems her whole life with like migraines and poor circulation and stuff. And they never checked for a hole in her heart because adults don't have that.
Right. Yeah.
That's not fair.
Mm-hmm.
We're very blessed and very fortunate that we've found a fix and there was a fix, but things like that do follow you. And it can be really frustrating to go, what if
my life was better?
Yeah. I wish things had played out differently. But that's one thing that I know fundamentally that she is good. Like she's not perfect. She's made mistakes, but she is a good person. I'm not sure if I am a good person. I think adversity, the pressure that gets put on your shoulders when you're really going through it, tells you a lot about who you are or who you need to be. And I feel like she's, at least as long as I've known her, she's always been who she needs to be, and has had just minor tweaks. But her attitude, her can-do spirit, her relentless hope, because it's not positivity she has, it's not toxic positivity like everything will work out, right? But it's hope. It's the willingness to wake up the next day and try it, because it has to get better. We say that a lot. It's like tomorrow has to be better, right? We're going to make it better tomorrow. Whereas for me, I've been confronted with all of these things, and I'm very passionate. Suffering has shaped me into a tool, into the kind of person that can look at other people who are struggling with great empathy, and want to understand them and want to help them in ways that genuinely matter. Sometimes we try to help people because it'll make us feel better about ourselves, or it'll make us less uncomfortable. Somebody comes to you for a problem and you immediately jump to fix it. It's because you go, there's a problem, fix it, or this is causing me stress, or this is, and you don't hear them. And so that results in like unfortunate things like where it's meant to be helpful, but there's a surgery and then 15 people all show up with a casserole on the same day. And then now the people who just had surgery have to eat food they don't like, that they didn't cook before it all goes bad, or then they save the casserole and they get food poisoning and now they're throwing up with stitches, right? Like awful things like that are meant to, but if anybody had actually stopped to listen, they would have been able to help them in a way that genuinely mattered. And so our suffering has taught us about that, but also has taught me a lot about letting go of I wish it was different. What if it had been X, Y, and Z, right? Because when we're in it, we can imagine our ideal future. If I had just made one minor change or one major change, everything would be better. But that's not reality.
Right.
I mean, you could go through, you might as well be writing a fantasy novel, because I can do it right now. Like if only I had been born into Barack Obama's family,
right,
I would have gotten to live in the White House.
Yeah. Definitely would have helped your political aspirations.
Yeah, he would be my dad. You could change anything if Ronald McDonald had, been real, he could have been my dad, But we sometimes spin fantasies that are so real and so close to reality to make ourselves feel better because we're afraid of what's actually happening.
Yeah.
And my wife has always been really good at dealing with grounded reality. And me, I'm a dreamer. I'm into fantasy. I'm into sci-fi. I'm a writer. I'm a creative. And so I go elsewhere to deal with my problems, and so she's really helped me to deal with concrete reality and to let go of resentment. If anybody listening is a caregiver, a caretaker of a spouse, sometimes resentment builds, and it's frustrating because you're not angry at the person who's sick. You're angry at what you've lost.
Right.
Because that happens a lot with caregivers and children. If a child has a permanent disability, or a spouse, you've lost the spouse, you can't go on dates anymore. You can't. Or, with a parent, they're not there to give you advice. They're there, but they're not them anymore.
Right.
And so you're grieving what was, and you're angry, but it's nobody's fault.
And you feel like you can't complain, right? Because you're like, they're the one that's truly suffering. I'm suffering a little bit because this is a hard cross to bear. But yeah, you feel like, who can I talk to about this? Because then I feel selfish and I feel stupid,
Oh,
you
and there's
know?
so much guilt too,
Yeah.
and sometimes judgment does come. I've had people, say to me, people very close to me say like, "Why are you going out with your friends? Don't you know your wife is sick?
Hmm.
Why are you playing that show with your band? Your
Yeah. Yeah.
band is silly and you should quit your band. Your wife is sick."
Yeah.
But adjusting to a new normal, because my wife dealt with a really serious health concern a year into our marriage and almost died. She was given 3 months to live. Um, but, we had already watched every season of Friends twice. We
Right.
had already spent months in bed eating ice cream, and then the money ran out, and then the ice cream ran out, and
Right.
then, and so life, when it's chronic illness or when it's a permanent disability or death, like everything changes and you have to adjust to new normal.
Yeah.
And so there are going to be people who even very close to you don't get it
Hmm.
and they don't understand it, and so you'll feel alienated and feel really isolated. But there have been key moments in my life where I could count on one hand the number of people who get it,
Hmm.
and those are some of the dearest people to me
Right.
because we understand and we know how to look out for each other. And they come from completely different walks of life. We've met in very interesting ways,
Yeah.
but we get it. And those become people that you can count on because it's almost like you're sharing your favorite movie and the person gets it, right?
Right.
But it's like you share pain
Hmm.
and you share struggles, you share, and it may not be exactly the same, but it's close enough that you get it.
Yeah.
And so it just puts you in a different plane of existence from other people, and everybody will have that.
Right. What was it like for you two when you heard that she had 3 months to live?
That was the worst day of my life.
Yeah.
Um, it almost felt like the universe was breaking up with me, right? Because when somebody says, it's not me, it's you,
Yeah.
right? Or whatever, you're like, oh man, it definitely is me.
Yeah.
There's something about you and something about me that doesn't jive, right?
Yeah.
But to find love at first sight and to find the person that you want to, like, I remember having a dream so vivid that I know what it feels like in my hands. I had a dream that we were old people and holding hands,
Hmm.
and like it's weird to say, but I know what her hand's going to feel like when she's 80.
Hmm.
And sometimes when I hold her hand now, I get a flashback to a thing that has never happened.
Yeah.
And so to have that suddenly taken away from you, it's really hard to be 21. We got married young, but 21 and looking at headstones and
Yeah.
figuring out if you're going to keep the dog or if you're, that's really scary. And half my friends weren't even married yet,
Right.
let alone jumping to 90 years old and,
Yeah.
comas and ICU visits and stuff. And that's really difficult. And fortunately for us, things got better,
Hmm.
but they didn't get better overnight and still are not 100% better. We're
Yeah.
still dealing with the effects of that. But I know that for a lot of people, it doesn't work out,
Hmm.
but I'm in a really unique and weird situation where I got whiplash, where it was not, we had 3 months and then that became 4 months and that became 5 months.
Hmm.
And even though I'm so happy it worked out, for the longest time, I was just waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Yeah.
Like my life felt like I was in a haunted house and I was waiting for somebody to jump out at me and scare
Yeah.
me. And so that kind of stress is really unique and really bizarre.
Yeah.
So if anybody's going through that, like there's other people that feel that way. It's almost like survivor's guilt.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
really weird, really strange.
Yeah. What in that period, what happens to, because you said your wife is such a hopeful person.
Mhm.
What happens to that hope when you feel like, okay, I've always been a hopeful person, but now we've been told essentially we have no more hope?
Yeah. Well, and I guess that comes to the very definition of hope.
Hmm.
Sometimes we think that if we are positive people, if you really got it all figured out, there are no bad days.
Yeah.
That's not true.
Right.
Right? Referencing the Lord of the Rings, say, right? Like hope is not Frodo skipping up Mount Doom and suddenly finding a second wind and the ring doesn't weigh 3 million pounds and, he could just chuck it into the fire and he bounces home to the Shire. Everything's done. Right?
Spoiler.
So, if you haven't read Lord of the Rings or seen the movies yet, you got 80 years, or whatever. But no, hope is, just referencing the movie, halfway up the mountain when Sam says, "Do you remember grass? Do you remember that?" And Frodo's like, "I don't remember what water tastes like.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember what the sun feels like." It's when everything is the darkest that you still find something.
Mm-hmm.
And even though they tried to instill hope in each other, right? They tried to instill hope in each other, and there was nothing for them to do. And Frodo was like, "I can't do it." And Sam was like, "I can't carry it for you, but I can carry you."
Yeah.
That's hope.
Right.
Like, everything is bad, but I can do one thing.
Right.
I can do something.
Yeah.
That's real hope. So when things are really dark, when there is no hope, like for me, like I'm not done with this project because frankly it's too painful to work on sometimes. But during that time, I wrote an album or a rock opera about this fake version of myself where things didn't get better.
Mm-hmm.
And everything, I mean, I tried to write it as realistic as possible because I felt myself slipping into dark coping behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
And I never went far down that road. I'm very fortunate. But I imagined a world where I went too far.
You got lost.
Yeah, and I lost her, I lost myself, I lost everything, and hit bottom. And I reached the end, like, I guess what I thought was the end of that album. And I was like, well, that sucks.
Yeah.
What a sad, awful, miserable story.
Right.
And that's where I found hope, was I was like, but no, I mean, even if I hit bottom, that's not it for me.
Mm-hmm.
Does my life suddenly not have meaning? Is that how I would want to live my life if I lost her?
Yeah.
That's, if there is a God, if there is a heaven and she's looking down on me, that's what she sees.
Right.
But also, like, I didn't rewrite the album and now he has a six-pack and he does push-ups every day and everything works out and he was never sad, right?
Yeah.
I realized that when you lose somebody and you're sad, it means that you loved them.
Yeah. So it's beautiful.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And so I was able to write the back half of the album where it does get better. It's not a happy ending.
Sure.
But it gets better.
Yeah.
And so that's where I adopted the mindset where things don't always get better, but they do get different.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. Why did you say you're not really convinced that you're a good person?
One, because people are static.
Sure.
Right. And so, like, I mean, if I were to hold that same metric, maybe my wife isn't a good person because she's not there yet. Right. But there's so much that I admire that externally, like to me in objective reality, like in terms of benefit to my life, she is a good person.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people out there that do believe that I am a good person. But I also know myself really well, and I know how fragile I am
Mm-hmm.
if I'm not careful.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think, again, using Lord of the Rings as an example, Aragorn did not believe he was a good person.
This episode's going to be called just Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings. But, he didn't, because he knew that kind of selfishness, every problem literally in the world was his grandpa's fault or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
So who's to say that he'd be able to not do what one of the greatest guys wasn't able to do,
Mm-hmm.
He was probably going to screw it up. But I have the propensity for great good and the capability for great evil.
Right, right. Yeah.
And
the wisdom to recognize that, right? Do you do a good job of giving yourself the same level of grace that you give the people you love deeply?
I didn't for a long time, and that's been what I've been trying to learn is, I don't know, I feel like maybe in the past, going back to history, right? Maybe it was really important for the Israelites to get the 10 Commandments because they were all killing each other and stealing things, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a baseline,
Yeah.
And then maybe thought evolved, it's like, maybe don't be arrogant, maybe don't be a jerk, treat other people how you would like to be treated. But I feel like that treat other people how you would like to be treated thing has been so deeply ingrained in us
Mm-hmm.
that sometimes we don't treat ourselves like we treat other people.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I've been learning to to give myself that same kind of compassion, because by default I am nice to servers. I am nice
Yeah,
to,
yeah.
customer support people. I am
Right.
nice to strangers. And
I draw the line at customer support.
it is your fault. You will be fired.
I can be nice to just about everyone. I struggle with people that I just feel like I'm talking to a robot.
Yeah.
And they're obsessed with policy. And I'm like, that's fine, but can you listen to me? You're just repeating the same thing.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But yeah, I mean, and even with like really good friends or even enemies, like this is where I've been learning a lot about boundaries lately, is that it's not my job to fix everything. It's my job to be me the best that I can and to fix what I can.
Yeah.
And that's part of why I've gotten into the line of work that I have, is because I really deeply believe in the creative community that I'm part of. It's saved my life, frankly. Like they are my friends. They're the people that I care about. And so part of the mission focused version of my business is finding ways to employ these people so that they can share their voices and their gifts with the world, because their art has blessed me immensely.
Yeah.
And so, even with the people around me, I try very, very hard to help them and uplift them. However, I can only do so much.
Right.
If you're not careful, the money will run out,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll get yourself into trouble. Then you're not helpful. And so it's important to set boundaries with other people and also set boundaries for yourself, and to maintain those boundaries, to treat other people as you would like to be treated, but also let them know this is how I treat you, right? Because otherwise they may take it for granted. And then you'd be like, oh, nobody treats me how I treat them.
Yeah.
But if you're doing everything secretly and not being transparent about how you treat them, then they'll never know. And that's why they take you for granted.
Right. Yeah.
So anyway, just learning to be a clear communicator, to be honest, and to be dependable. Part of the reason why those policies are in place is to protect the business, but also to be clear, if you don't return this in 10 days, there will be a fine,
right.
So that people turn it in on time. Right. Yeah. I don't think, sometimes we forget that consequence is part of love.
Right.
It is really, I'm a believer in unconditional love. I'm not a believer in unconditional trust.
Yeah. That's a good point. Because once trust is broken, you're like, I don't have to stop loving you, but I have to reassess how we deal with each other.
Yeah,
right?
How we interact with each other, and that doesn't mean that. And when I say I'm a believer in unconditional love, you can rescind privileges or change the way that you interact with people, but you don't have to go on a war path to destroy them.
Right.
You always have the ability to say goodbye.
Yeah.
Right. Or to just be defensive, but not to be offensive.
Right.
And I think that when people say take the high road, it doesn't mean to keep giving and giving and giving. It just means to say, you know what? I'm going to let you be you.
Yeah.
But not to me.
Right. Yeah. I want to go back to, in talking about this really difficult period for you when hope was such a perilous thing. I want to talk about the idea of giving up. And I want to read this quote to you, and I want to hear your thoughts on it. This is by Charles Bukowski, who I enjoy greatly. He said, I was laying in bed one night and I thought, I'll just quit. To hell with it. And another little voice inside me said, don't quit. Save that tiny little ember of spark and never give them that spark, because as long as you have that spark, you can start the greatest fire again. Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely false. Complete nonsense. No, I'm just kidding. No, I've been very fascinated by the idea of giving up, like what that means.
Yeah.
I don't want to get too deep in the weeds here, but one thing that I've learned through going to therapy, through working through a lot of these things, is just that men underreport depression or mental illness, right? And so because of that, we don't have a firm understanding of male depression.
Yeah.
And so, because like one of the symptoms of depression is can't get out of bed.
Yeah.
Right. But when you're a father of 4 and you financed your mattress,
right,
you need to get out of bed or there's no more bed.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of people, especially in the male demographic, that feel compelled to get out of bed. And then so the depression manifests as hopelessness rather than lethargy.
Right.
And so it's this feeling of beating your head against the wall, and you never break through, right? So, but like for me, like what does it mean to give up? I could stop going to work. I could just stop trying. I could let my marriage fail.
Yeah.
Could neglect my children. And so, I mean, to me, I guess that is giving up, because I'm no longer being a creative force anymore. I'm no longer being a source of goodness.
Yeah.
And some people do choose to do that. I had a conversation with my wife this week. Because I know that, here in a safe environment where we're talking about our feelings and I'm having a pretty good day, it could come across to anybody watching that I've got it all figured out.
Sure. Yeah.
But this week I had a hopeless bout
Mm-hmm.
and was really frustrated by injustices in the world, things that had been, I run a business. It's remarkable how much people hate paying bills.
Sure. Yeah.
Everybody hates paying bills.
Yeah.
Even businesses hate paying their bills on time, right?
Yeah.
And they don't do it.
Uh-huh.
And that can cause serious problems for your life when people don't honor their word or their commitments.
Yeah.
It causes problems. And so that I have been outright wronged by people since going into business.
Sure.
And it doesn't feel great.
Yeah.
And I was just ranting. We go on garbage dates every night, right? That's what we call it. We set aside time after work to take out the garbage and then go on a long walk.
Okay, nice.
Right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I just call them garbage dates. So we know, we go on real dates too, but we know that there's something to look forward to every day, to just go and talk for at least 30 minutes.
I like that. I wish you didn't explain it and you just told everyone, yeah, we're going on a garbage date.
We're going on a garbage date. And that's what our kids get. They're like, garbage date? What is
Yeah.
But yeah, we go on our garbage dates and we talk, but she let me. That's where we talk about heavy stuff before we have to jump back into taking care of the kids and crying and changing diapers and stuff. But she let me rant for a little bit, and I literally said, I'm so tired. Like, I realized just how fragile everything is.
Mm-hmm.
Because if enough people start thinking that way, where they give up and they're just going to start taking things and cutting corners, and like, society is really fragile.
Sure.
I'm a firm believer in the unconquerable spirit and human will. But there is one side of society who will be faced with World War II, for example, and will figure out efficient ways to can food and to store wheat and to rebuild society. And another side of the world who started the war and spent all of their creative energy figuring out how to kill each other.
Yeah.
That's giving up.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's we have, as a society and throughout history, have had periods of global giving up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the thing that gives me hope is eventually we come out of it and we say, let's stop that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's stop this. This is crazy.
Yeah.
And those people who don't give up, who keep that spark, light that fire of hope eventually. But in my darkest moments, I'm like, why is any of that my problem?
Yeah.
What about me?
Right.
Then I get angry, because sometimes I'm like, what about me?
Yeah. Yeah.
I've given so much to other people. What about me?
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, I'm going to die. It's not about me.
Yeah. Yeah.
None of this is about me.
Mm-hmm.
My job is to live an interesting life that excites me, and then to do the most good that I can.
Yeah.
At whatever cost. Hopefully I absorb that cost responsibly.
Right.
And I don't hurt my family. That's why boundaries are important, is to do the thing that you love and do the most good in the world without destroying yourself.
Yeah.
But like, I think it's noble to die for something you believe in, or to live for something you believe in. And I am very, very passionate about following that voice inside you, where you see something in society and you go, I know that can be better.
Mm-hmm.
I can provide value there. That voice tells you will be a good fit here. I'm not saying everybody's going to be a good entrepreneur. Some people are very bad at it, and shouldn't be in business, right? Maybe that's me, to be honest, right? Maybe I'm bad at business, but I'm a good creative,
right?
And so I've got to, whatever. But that being said, that voice that tells you, I really hate accounting, I really hate being an orthodontist. I really hate being a musician.
Mm-hmm.
Acting is not for me.
Yeah.
Right? Like, one person in the creative space that I really, really admire is Rick Moranis.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you know about Rick Moranis.
I know the name.
Yeah, so he was in Honey, We Shrunk the Kids, Honey, We Shrunk Ourselves, Spaceballs, right?
Yeah, yeah.
He was one of the highest paid actors, like really popular, was having his moment, and he lost his wife.
Mm.
And there was a voice inside of him that said either you can keep up with this high stress, demanding, very public job, or you can do the thing that you're meant for that is needed right now in the world. And he retired and has been a dad this whole time.
Mm.
But he just retired from the Hollywood life. That to me is more like, there are some people who can do Hollywood and somehow keep their lives together and are good people, right? But for him, he probably had a moment where, you know, like for me, I am like, am I a good person? I could either blow this thing up or I can do something really good. And here I know for sure it's going to be good.
Mm-hmm.
And he chose to be a dad.
Yeah, yeah.
And he listened to that voice.
Right.
You know, some people think about that voice only in terms of starting a business, or being an influencer, or being an actor, or pursuing the arts, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes people have that voice to say, give it up.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, I think holding on to that spark and doing the noble thing instead of the self-aggrandizing thing is really important. And we all know what that noble thing is.
Right.
Even if it's just one more day.
Yeah.
Even if it's just, I don't have enough to eat, but I have an outstanding invoice. I'm going to pay the invoice and go get a free lunch somewhere from somebody offering free lunch, because they do that.
Yeah, yeah.
But I owe somebody.
Right.
I'm going to keep my word.
Yeah.
You know, that's the noble thing.
Yeah, that's cool, man. We touched on this a little bit, but I'd love to hear sort of your definition of what is ultimately the great utility of suffering.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because it's something completely unavoidable. You know, everyone experiences it in different ways, but the human experience is not without suffering.
Yeah.
You know, even if you happen to have a pretty gilded life and, you know, no one around you is suffering, people are going to die, and you're going to lose people, and, you know, catastrophe is going to be nearby. Right. And so how do we seek utility in the midst of that stuff?
Yeah. It's really fascinating. Like, I love that you brought up like the utility of suffering, because another way of putting that is the problem of evil, which is like a great theological question about, you know, the existence of God. Like, how can there be a God when there's so much suffering? Right. So, but that's the crux of the issue. If anybody, I'm a huge movie buff, but if anybody has ever seen Everything Everywhere All at Once, that movie, that eventually gets to the point that central question is, what is the utility of all this? What is the purpose? Either everything is awful, everything everywhere all at once is awful and pointless, and there is no meaning, we should stop and die.
Yeah.
I destroy everything. Or everything is beautiful and meaningful and rich and worth it.
Yeah.
Right? And so you've got the problem of evil and the utility of suffering, to me, on the other hand. And to me, the utility of suffering, the purpose of that, whether you believe in a God that is shaping you, or whether you believe in just the human spirit and in just some metaphysical goodness, immaterial goodness, whatever it is, like, there's a big difference between creativity and destruction. But sometimes they go hand in hand. They're necessary. Destruction is necessary, right? So if I were to just take a sledgehammer to your drywall and not inform you, and, you know, you're like, what the heck, man? Why are you smashing up my house? Yeah. Smash everything, move everything out to the, to the lawn, rip everything apart. You'd probably be pissed.
Yeah.
But if you're like, dude, I just need some time to blow off steam, I'm so mad at you right now for wrecking my house, and you went away, and while you were gone, mad at me, surprise, TLC comes through and renovates everything while you're gone, and then you come back, right? Even though you didn't have the proper understanding, right? Like, there was utility in that suffering, is because we were doing a renovation.
Right.
And so I think, you know, you like suffering in our life renovates us as people.
Mm-hmm.
Life isn't going to be what you want, but it's going to be what you need. Regardless of if we get to choose, because most of the time we don't get to choose our suffering.
Right.
And that's not fair.
Yeah.
Right. It's not fair that we don't get to choose,
Mm-hmm.
but it is shaping us into something more useful.
Right.
Because the suffering that we get to go through allows us to connect to other specific subsets of people.
Mm-hmm.
Most people who lead causes or who start nonprofits are either victims or familiar with the thing that they're starting, the problem that they're solving. And so like everything that we have in life, everything good is built on suffering.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like people watching this right now have the ability to watch us have a conversation and the ability to play it back on demand, the ability to hear it, because there were thousands and thousands of years of people who could not relive their memories.
Yeah.
Who could not communicate with people across vast distances, and that made them very sad.
Yeah.
And so all the technology that we have solves a problem. It solves suffering.
Yeah. And it's because of some former sadness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And when we figured out a way to replicate the eye and put it to paper.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Right.
And that's what happens when you don't give up on that spark. You're like, man,
Mm-hmm.
I really wish I could see my mom's face one more time.
Yeah.
So you spend your whole life trying to figure out how to do that for other people.
Right.
It's pretty wild and pretty noble.
Yeah. Yeah. And now my kids will never be able to forget me.
I know. Maybe it's too much memory. People see all of my stupid pranks, like, my dad jokes and.
Right. But yeah, it's, I even wish, like, I would love if I had footage of my dad when he was in his 20s or 30s. Like, I have some scattered photographs, but it is a beautiful thing to have so much captured now,
Yeah. And I've thought about that too, because even just looking back on my life, my parents were not, my dad was a huge photographer, but there's not much video of me.
Right.
And so like even for my kids, they're going to think, wow, man, I wish I could just watch dad when he was 10,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. In all of this that we've talked about, we've, philosophized a little bit. What for you is the role of divine providence?
Divine providence. Like me personally.
Yeah.
I guess to ask a question like, is that assuming that there is divine providence or?
I mean, that's your answer. It's whatever you assume.
Yeah. There's a really interesting, one of the things that, like the great wrestle of my life is that I feel like I have had profound and beautiful experiences that I cannot explain, where I cannot deny the existence of a God. And on the other hand, I'm just a natural doubter and a skeptic.
Sure.
And so in a lot of ways, I kind of conduct my life as if there is no God. And functionally, that's kind of the case. If there be a God, he's chosen to either veil us so that we can't see him or to just be at a distance for some reason. And so functionally in the world, there is no visible act of God that can solve all of our problems.
Right.
I choose to believe that logically, if there is a God, and if God is all powerful and all loving and all knowing and all of these things, there's this thing within us, this spark, this hope that there is something like that, someone out there. If he's put us through this, there is a reason. And if he's hidden himself, there is a reason for that.
Right.
And that doesn't mean that he's cowardly. That doesn't mean that he hates us. That doesn't mean that he's spiteful. Because if he's all loving, all knowing, all of these things, right? If he's the best one and he hates us, that's not God.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't make any sense. That's not God. Right? Now, I choose to believe that there is a God. That's faith.
Sure.
Right? I make that choice. And we exercise faith in things every day. I've got a very different understanding of faith, and it's fascinating because you can choose to have this version of faith and be a faith-filled person even if you don't believe in a God.
Yeah.
if you believe that faith is a principle of action and power that all of us have, like even applying, say, like Paul's understanding that faith is, things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen, right? Like, I don't know that Walmart is still standing right now.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that it's like 5 minutes away across the freeway over there.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't see it.
Right.
So I have a substance of things hoped for and evidence of things not seen.
Mm-hmm.
That Walmart, if I drive to these coordinates, it will still be standing. Right. And we put faith in things every day. And normally when we put faith in things like a chair and it collapses on us, if everybody's okay, it's funny.
Yeah.
Comedy comes from misplaced faith, right? But horror also comes from misplaced faith.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody collapses, their chair collapses and they hit their head and die.
Yeah.
That's awful, right? So we put our faith and our trust in things constantly every day.
Mm-hmm.
I think that God, divine providence, is, if we have a loving God, say he's our father, whatever it is, some substance that created us, if they are there and they have set us apart in a way where they can't see us to teach us to do the right thing, they're in the next room.
Mm-hmm.
There will be echoes and reminders, just like if I'm a loving father, or at least I try to be.
Mm-hmm.
There will be reminders. My kids are outside playing. Reminders to come in when the streetlights come on. And if they don't, a call to come in for dinner.
Yeah.
And even though you can't see me because you're apart, right, you can hear me and you can come. When I'm gone and they have a disagreement with their friends, there are memories or things that I have taught them, echoes of things that we've talked about, that hopefully teach them to do the right thing. And if they make a mistake, hopefully to remember what I've taught them about mistakes and to do the right thing.
Yeah.
I believe that spark and those bizarre things that I can't explain, where things have worked out inexplicably, or even the inexplicable sparks in other people where they have come to help me, they've found utility in their suffering.
Yeah.
That to me is evidence that there is a God. And it also teaches me about who that God is, if he's there. If he is there, he's going to be somebody who knows what pain feels like. He's going to be somebody who knows what it feels like to weep and to cry. He's going to be somebody that does not like pain or suffering. And he's going to be a creator that teaches us how to find utility in suffering and then to perpetuate that goodness.
Yeah.
Because I find it interesting that with, what is it, the second law of thermodynamics, that everything tends to entropy. But there are active forces in the universe that are constantly making more stuff.
Right. Yeah.
The natural state of things is to fall apart and is to give up. And the miracle of everything is that we don't.
Yeah.
So that to me is divine providence. And for anybody watching, you can ascribe that to divine providence or some sort of other definition other than a literal, space guy, or whatever out there in the universe. But that hanging on to that spark and not giving up is something worthwhile and something beautiful and something miraculous.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that's the miracle. I like how you said that. What does, we'll just do a couple more questions and wrap up for you. What does fatherhood mean to you?
Fatherhood, at the base biological level, it's just some guy who made a person, right? But there's, especially given my wife's experiences and, with growing up in foster care and, fatherhood and parenthood in general, is so much more than that. There's the mechanical thing, and then there's the title that we bestow on people, which is a father or of dad, number one dad, and you get the mug, right? And to me, in an age where people are trying to redefine what masculinity is, and I don't mean like some sort of culture war or whatever, but we're trying to figure out what is Rambo, the definition of manliness. It's this capability of destruction, right? To me, fatherhood and manliness is having that ability to be a great destroyer and choosing not to.
Yeah.
and directing that power towards creative things and
Mhm.
constructive things and defensive things
Yeah.
and building safety and then being a protector.
Yeah.
And that does not mean being possessive. It
Mhm.
means being a protector of people's lives so that they can make their own choices. I can throw a football. I could probably throw a football over my house.
Mhm.
When a baby is born, they're about the size of a football, right? A little heavier, right? But
Yeah.
it's always the joke, when I'm carrying a newborn or whatever, with my sons, I stiff arm them all,
Yeah.
gently, of course, and safely, but on my way to the fridge to get a bottle or
Yeah.
whatever. But when you hold a child, you could destroy them,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you choose not to.
Right.
And children, as they get older, they come to look at you as somebody who is safe,
Mhm.
because in their most helpless state, you could have destroyed them.
Right.
Babies are kind of dumb. I love them.
Yeah.
You got to teach them when to sleep, because they come out with roles reversed. They're
Yeah.
sleeping all day and awake all night. They don't know how to eat. They don't know how to do anything. You
Yeah.
got to teach them everything. And fatherhood and manliness is looking at those who are the most vulnerable, who may not have anything to offer. Like utility, right? Babies don't do anything.
Yeah.
They're poop machines.
Right.
From a utility standpoint, they don't offer me anything but potential
Mhm. And love.
and love.
Yeah.
Right? But even then, you've got to teach them that love.
Mhm.
Right? If you don't nurture them and don't teach them when to go to bed, teach them how to take care of themselves, teach them those good habits, they grow up to be like you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So, and one of the greatest heartaches of my life is when my kids grow up to be like me in a bad way.
Mhm.
But that's an opportunity for me to do the manly thing and make changes in myself,
Right.
to lead by example so that they can change course too.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to force them to be something that I'm not.
Right. Right.
Right. So fatherhood and manliness is having the potential for great violence, for great anger, and for, destruction, and choosing to be loving, choosing to withhold wrath, choosing to demonstrate forgiveness, choosing to ask for forgiveness from your
Mhm.
children when you've wronged them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And setting an example of constructive living, and then striving, using that extra little biological oomph or whatever to be that much better every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I'm taller on average, reaching for things that are out of reach for other people
Yeah.
and giving them to them, using everything that you have. That to me is fatherhood and
Yeah.
manliness.
Do you have a moment for you that has been the greatest, like, proud dad moment for you?
Yeah. Um, Two things. I'll use my oldest two, and for posterity's sake, it's not because I don't love the youngest two. They're just, and these are a little bit more profound than finally using the potty, even though I'm
Right.
so proud of them.
Right.
But my daughter, going through all of these medical things, and also her dad starting a business and having financial insecurity, right? Going through that, I was on a daddy-daughter date with my daughter, and my daughter wanted to go do a ropes course. She's crazy, right? The wildest thing is that I'm not afraid of heights. I've never been afraid of heights until my daughter was hundreds of feet in the air. Oh my gosh. Now I know what it's like to be afraid of heights, because I was just like so afraid for her. But she was just fearless and just out there. And that gave us an opportunity to really connect on the way home. And, I asked her, I was like, how's life? And she's like, I've been thinking a lot lately about what I want to be when I grow up. And I said, oh, what's that? And she said, I think I want to be a helper or a therapist or a counselor, somebody like that, because I've gone through a hard time and I don't want other people to feel like they're alone. And I feel like I'm pretty good at hearing people and seeing them for who they really are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was just like, holy crap, what did I do?
I did something right.
Yeah. And it was less like, man, I've got to get some credit from this, and more like, wow, I'm in the car with a really amazing individual.
Yeah.
She's awesome.
Yeah.
And then she followed that up with, or I'll just dance on Broadway, and, and that was just great. And then with my son, he's 6 and he's got big emotions, and sometimes things are unfair and he throws tantrums. And, the greatest thing recently for him was he threw a fit. He had to go to his room. And I opened the door, and normally I go, do you know why this happened? We try to reason through that.
Mm-hmm.
And he fired back. And again, I'm like, what the heck? This kid is remarkable. He said, Dad, stop. Before you say anything, I want you to know that I do know why I'm here. And I made a mistake, but people can change. And I have some goals for you. And he came back with some goals and an actionable plan for how he was going to change.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, you're going into first grade. Like, what the heck? But then he said, but Dad, I wasn't right of me to yell or throw things, but I need you to hear why I'm mad.
Right.
And then he just calmly told me.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, buddy.
Yeah.
You're right. That wasn't fair.
Mm-hmm.
What can I do? And he
Right.
said, so I've been thinking about that too. And he had a plan.
It's like, I got some goals for you.
I got some goals, and they were all fair. And it was just this like sweet moment of understanding, because sometimes when people are throwing tantrums, you're like, what is going on?
Yeah.
It's just, they flip. They can't, they're young, so they can't express themselves. You got to give them a lot of grace. But for him to finally reflect and articulate things
Mm-hmm.
and take accountability, but also not just like, there was enough trust there for him to stand up to me.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that takes a lot of courage to fire back at your dad, because I'm giant.
Right.
I feel like I'm 10 still. I feel like I'm young, but I've got a beard. I'm scary. I tower over them.
Right.
And so for this little 6-year-old to look up and say, all right, that's how I'm going to change, Dad.
Mm-hmm.
But for you.
Yeah.
And then to responsibly and appropriately stick it to me.
Yeah.
It's pretty badass. That was awesome.
Well, it's just amazing communication skills for such a young kid. And that's you don't get those without having that in the home, so that's cool.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, just to wrap it up, I want to see if you have any questions for me.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, for you, just firing back on that, like, what is fatherhood or manliness to you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I, don't have any children, but I think a lot about posterity. I think as an artist, I'm obsessed with leaving things behind and, what that means. And, but, it's, for me, obviously this is all just hope, wishful thinking at this point. But for me, I want fatherhood to be a chance for me to show children how magical the world is, and to show children how wonderful they are, and to show them how kind they can be, and to show them that we can go through incredible amounts of pain and still be okay. And I think back on some of the experiences I had with my dad, where he showed me a kind of love that I didn't know existed before he showed me that kind of love, because I couldn't really get that level of love from anybody else but a dad, right? And you could say the same thing about my mom. The chance to show that to your children is a sacred opportunity, and each relationship you have in life is so specific. Like, the kind of love I can show my nieces and nephews is a really specific uncle to niece nephew love.
Yeah.
Right. And I would say in my case, I feel really blessed that mine is really unique, where because I haven't got married, I've spent so much time with my nieces and nephews. I see them all the time, and I'm way more in their lives than my uncles were ever in my life. And so it's an extra level of that uncle love. And yeah, I'm just excited to be able to sort of maximize that specific kind of love, that's really exciting to me. And, to see, I can't imagine how magical it feels to see these little humans that you made them, they're part of your blood, they're part of your DNA. And so even if they're deeply different from you, you're like, I created that essentially out of whole cloth. Like, a couple of years ago, you weren't even a cell. You didn't exist in any, terrestrial form, right? and to just, you know, be with them and see them progress. It's got to be, it's got to alter your life for good, you know. So that's something I'm excited for.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
I guess not just reflecting questions. So you asked me about divine providence, like what's the role of divine providence, but I guess a little different take. To you, what is the role of human providence
Mm-hmm.
in life?
Yeah, I think people, I've always believed this. I think people come into your life for really specific, if you want to call them divine reasons. But yeah, I look at all the relationships I've had and I'm like, I can't chalk this up to really good luck and beautiful happenstance. Like, to me, it's way more magical than that. Like, and admittedly, I'll say, I think I've been gifted an ease and an ability to be with people and talk to people, and that's come easy. And for that's not the case with everybody. For some people, relationships are really hard, and it's hard to connect, and it's hard to find commonalities. And I think I've been blessed in that capacity. But it just excites me that every single day of your life, whether you're really extroverted or you live in a really small insular world, you can meet somebody and you can change their life or they can change your life. And it could be a stranger, it could be a new friend, it could be a new person born, it could be a long lost cousin, but humans have the ability to change you really deeply. And as humans, we get so stuck in our own thoughts, in our own process, our own murky brains. And sometimes the only people that can get us out of that are other people with different viewpoints and different experiences. And so I just, I look at all the things in life that bring me joy, and there's a lot of them, but I think nothing beats connecting with people. And like I said, it's really cool how unique like my relationship is with my nieces and nephews versus my parents versus my high school friends versus some of my college friends versus some people that I really, really like but don't know super well. You know, because there's all kinds of levels to friendship, to acquaintances, to family. And so I just love that you can connect with people and that it can change you. It can change you really deeply. Like, I probably have to credit, I mean, I got to give myself some credit, but ultimately I am the way I am because of the people that have been in my life, you know?
Love that. I guess last thing, could we maybe take turns doing this?
Sure.
Because I don't know, this might be the only chance to an audience this big that I could tell my wife how I feel about her.
Please. I would love to hear it.
But it would be interesting to also hear you say, like, okay, to your future wife,
Mm-hmm.
what would you like her to know?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Is it okay if I go first?
Please.
Yeah, to my wife, I just want to thank her for the person that she is, because I've learned everything that I've learned about masculinity and fatherhood and goodness. All of my roles and responsibilities have come from her demonstrating in quiet and subtle and persistent ways how to be gentle, how to not give up, how to have hope. Meeting her is the pivotal point in my entire life and has made me everything that I am today. And I am just so proud of her because I cannot take credit for the life that she's lived. I've helped the last 10 years, but the life that she's lived as a whole started long before me and might continue after me. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that she persisted and clung to hope as a child and the way that she oriented herself to end cycles of abuse and addiction in her family is something that I will never match, no matter how many books I publish or songs I put out or whatever. Every little positive, constructive, persistent choice she's made in her life is going to have a profound impact on our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren forever.
Yeah.
And I am so proud of her and so grateful for that.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you, man. I don't know how to top that with my imaginary wife, but yeah, this is a tough question because, as somebody that's been single a long time and has desired love and marriage so deeply for so long, there's been so many iterations of what I've imagined my wife to be. And not just what she looks like and what she does and how she is, but just our future together and our family and, some of these vivid thoughts I've had, kind of like when you had that dream about your wife, at 90 years old. I've had some of these incredibly vivid thoughts and dreams and moments where I've pictured things, and then I've had those torn away from me and have had these dreams dashed, and I've had people that I've come to fall in love with and thought, well, this might be it. This might be my wife. And then I've had them leave. And so to say some sort of message to my future wife, I guess it would only be that I've gone through whatever I've gone through, whatever levels of hell I've crawled through. I've done it for you, and I'm grateful for the hell that I've been through because it brought me to you, and I don't know. I find a lot of beauty in the fact that every single thing I've gone through will have led me to you, and every single thing that you've gone through will have led you to me. And it's hard because I've had probably more time than most to think about what kind of husband I'm going to be, what kind of lover I'm going to be. And I want that to be my greatest accomplishment. I want it to be everything that I have to give. And so, yeah, my message to this future ethereal wife of mine is that I'm going to give you everything I got. So that's it.
Kind of jealous that you had a little bit more time to prep, because I feel like I got thrown into the deep end. I've been building the car while driving it. So
whatever, dude. You are a deeply articulate man. So I appreciate you coming on, dude. This was awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, brother.